Hello, BookTube. Well, I took advantage of a crisp, clear, beautiful, mild spring morning to go to the Brattle Bookshop, a used bookstore in the heart of downtown Boston, where I've been going there for a long time, but I haven't been there in quite some time. This is one of the longest times I've been away from the Brattle for entirely voluntary reasons. When I wasn't too sick to go, and when I wasn't out of the country. It's been quite some time. It's been since when David Murphy was here. Uh, which was the first week of this month. Now we're in the final days of the month. So I went to the Brattle. I had a couple of other errands to run in the area. Uh, that was a fig leaf. I was mainly going for the Brattle, and I did. It was wonderful, and I got a pile of books. I got a pile of books that I want to show you. Heavy hardcovers, almost all of them. So there were a whole bunch of themes that ran throughout here. There are only a couple of books that don't fit themes. But we can look at we'll start and stop. We'll start and finish this pile with books about books that are always so much fun. I love those things so much. Just today, I saw a video from Britta Bowler about books. That if I remember, I'll leave a link to it down below. It's really good. A lot of suggestions for Nonfiction November, which is coming right up. Right, it's just a couple of days away. I wish I could say with the purest self-satisfaction that I got only nonfiction today, but I didn't. I didn't. I got fiction as well. Although the fiction also adheres to a theme. But the first one that we can do is by Jeff Gomez. This is from long enough ago for it to be completely irrelevant. Is that right? Yeah, 2008, which might as well be 50 years ago. This is his book, Print is Dead, Books in the Digital Age. Maybe it won't be completely dead. I don't think I ever read this when it came out. I'm pretty sure that I didn't. And it's all about the digital revolution. It's about the decline in reading. It's about statistics that you will regularly see in the popular press that deny the decline in reading. I love things like this anyway. A Jeremiah ad that has anything to do with tech is going to be severely outdated. If it's from 2008, that's almost 20 years ago. So we'll give it a try. I'll give it a try and see. There might be some nuggets in there. I'm hoping. I mean, I remember what e-reading was like in 2008. In 2008, I never thought that e-reading would be any part of my life. In a million years, I never thought that. But I do remember its beginning, and I remember that it came hand in hand with a whole bunch of obligatory hand wringing. So we will see. It's not a long thing. Take me no time at all to do. Then let's see here. What can we do next? Okay, we'll do biography next. This is, in many ways, the find of the day. I never see this author's work out in the wild. Never. The author is Theodore Maynard, and this is his biography of Henry VIII, which is, I would argue, probably the last thing you would see by this author if you saw anything out in the wild. This thing had middling sales. I think it sold a few thousand copies, and so did all of its sister books, profiles of other Tudor figures. In Maynard's view, the importance wasn't that they were Tudor figures; is that they were Catholic figures, because he was a Catholic writer, a Catholic thinker. Probably his most popular books definitely his most popular books were all dealt explicitly with Catholicism. So Catholic saints, including the first American saint. Two books on the history of American Catholicism that are really good. He's a really eloquent writer, also slyly witty. I don't understand why he is not referenced, why I never see his books used, why I never hear him talked about or anything like that. Just recently I had my friend Jack Hansen on this channel, and I think I can predict the future as well as anyone can. I feel certain that in his early 50s, when he has no financial need to, when he has teaching gigs and whatnot, speaking gigs, that Jack will set aside time, maybe with a genius grant of some kind, and write a history of Catholicism, maybe even a history of American Catholicism, that will be in many ways. I've read everything by Maynard, I'm pretty sure, and his books on Catholicism are wonderful. Contentious, but wonderful. You can't have a history of Catholicism that isn't contentious unless it's just fraudulent or boring or both. I feel certain that Jack will write such a book, and his heirs will live off the proceeds for it. It'll be a huge hit. But this isn't going to be just God-bothering. I know that already, because I don't think I've ever read his biography of Henry VIII. I'll know in the first chapter. But I read his book on Elizabeth I, And it was just delightful. I mean, it didn't. He was a delightful figure anyway. His books are well worth reading, but I think you'll only find them now if you go to some sort of gated community Catholic bookstore, which is a terrible shame. Or not a Catholic bookstore, because Maynard is not in print anymore, but a Catholic library of some kind. Then we have okay. Let's do a blast of American history here. The Henry VIII book is not the last Tudor thing we're doing. We have Tudors scattered all throughout here. But we can do two from the American Revolution. By Bruce Bliven, I found a hardcover with a Mylark dust jacket of Battle from Manhattan. His slim book on, misnamed, on George Washington's steady retreat down the island of Manhattan. Washington did not battle from Manhattan because if he had once turned and laid out his figures, he'd have been trounced. They'd all have been captured or killed. And he knew that. And he was willing to ignore it, but he had trained military people around him who said, you can't ignore that. There is no other army. If you turn and give battle because your pride is hurt, everything will be ruined. He wanted to do it anyway, but they overrode him and got him not to. And Bliven's book on it is great. This is just fantastic, as history goes. It's not long, and it's riveting all throughout. As all of the, I have this, yeah, see, I'm glad they include this. I have a mass market paperback of this. I get a mass market an old Penguin mass market paperback of it. I read it until the paperback falls apart, consult it until the paperback falls apart, and then I wait patiently to find another mass market paperback, the kind with the blue spine. So to have it as a hardcover, that's really good. But here we have the map gives you Manhattan as it was and as it is. So that if you happen to live in Manhattan, you can grapple with where everything was and where this retreat took place. I was very happy to find a hardcover of that. That's going to go in the little book room, I think, when the massive book reorganization happens. A massive book reorganization is on the horizon. It's going to happen in either November or early December. A massive book reorganization. Then this next one, this is James Thomas Flexner. I have often recommended his book on Washington. He wrote a 4-volume biography of George Washington that is really, really good. And then he did a 1-volume abridgment called The Indispensable Man that was a huge hit. Book of the Month Club, bestseller list, book clubs all over the country, a huge hit. People weren't willing to embark on a 4-volume history of anybody, but the 1-volume book, oh my. Somehow this subject came up recently, maybe in a live stream. I found a beautiful copy, again with a plastic covering, of his book Young Hamilton, about young Alexander Hamilton. So, but figuratively speaking, I mean, you get all of Hamilton's biography in this book. He just concentrates on Hamilton's upbringing, on Hamilton's participation in Washington's war. There's a 2-volume biography of Hamilton by an author named Hendrickson that is handily definitive on the subject, far, far more in-depth and also more icily, beautifully written than Ron Chernow's book on Hamilton. But Ron Chernow's book is still really good, and so is this one. So I was happy to find it for $2, $3 out in the sale lot. Then we have, let's do a little more Tudor stuff. We have Tudor fiction. The first one is a book from, I want to say, 2010. Is that right? When were you published? Oh, are you going to be cutesy about it? 2007. This is by Venora Bennett, and it is called Portrait of an Unknown Woman. It's got this strange half dust jacket, and the naked hardcover of the book is, the front of it is a detail from a Hans Holbein portrait of a family group of Thomas More. And then the back is the whole thing. That is not the whole thing, but rather the cartoon diagram, basically the program of it. And that's what this book is about. It's got these people in this portrait, right? There's More in the middle, and then you've got all these different people. And who are they all? Is it possible that there's one woman in this crowd who we don't know, or who the author looks at that painting long and hard, and then worms fiction into the painting, and of course it's set against the turbulent backdrop of More serving and then eventually arguing with his king, Henry VIII. And I remember reading this at the time. This is, what, again, almost 20 years ago. And thinking that it was a little bit flat, a little bit lackluster, a really good premise, a really good idea for a book. But I'm going to try it again. You never know. I was thinking on the way back here, well, maybe you were just comparing it to absolutely fantastic Tudor fiction that you have read, and that was lessening it for you. Absolutely fantastic Tudor fiction, including the play A Man for All Seasons. And then I mentally did a Homer Simpson moment, because I realized that I just recently reread the best Tudor fiction ever written, Hilary Mantel's Tudor fiction, which means I'm primed to dislike this again. But we'll give it a try. I didn't dislike it the first time. I thought it was a little bit flat. I'll give it another try here. I'll hope that just like how Holbein's portrait was Venora Bennett's key, her doorway into the world of Tudor politics, I'll be hoping that Holbein himself, who's a character in this book, is my way in. Well, I read a book about him earlier this year, and it was really good. So, the other piece of Tudor fiction is a hardcover. I every time I get this, I give it away. I will be holding on to this copy. I am not needing to worry about whether or not this is going to blow me away, because it's incredible, absolutely incredible. It's Entered from the Sun by George Garrett, a novel about Christopher Marlowe. Garrett had written two Elizabethan, big whopping Elizabethan historical novels before this one. He wrote Death of the Fox and The Succession. The Succession is about as close as this fantastic, challenging, wonderfully playful author ever got to writing a boring book. It isn't, but it comes close. In passages, it comes close. This, nothing like that at all. This is amazing. It's pyrotechnic. It's difficult, very difficult to classify, but he was proud of that. And it's amazing. The best Marlowe novel that's ever been written, and there have been hundreds of them. And when I opened this thing just to see why the cover wasn't laying flat, I found this. A black and white glossy photo of the author, which can have only one reason. There's only one reason why this is inside this book. This had to have been a review copy. There's no sheet. As far as I can tell, no, there's no paperwork in here, just the author's photo. But that's the only reason that it would be in here. So, somebody, this was no copy of mine. Okay, so that was Tudor fiction. Now we'll move on to World War II. We'll move on to World War II. I found a hardcover copy of Telford Taylor's first book. I mentioned Telford Taylor came up in that week of book hauls with David Murphy. He wrote a huge book late in his career called Munich. Great big thing. And David did me the solid of finding me the trade paperback when we were at the book barn. But this was his first book, Sword and Swastika, which is basically a military study of Germany in the run-up to World War II, on the eve of World War II, and during World War II. The military, this treasured idea that the German military was a proud, independent institution with wonderful traditions and a heritage of its own. and that therefore there was some sort of useful demarcation to be made between it and Nazis and Nazism. I've only read this once. I read it out of a library. I've never owned a copy, and I like Telford Taylor on the page. That's reason enough. I like him on the page. So, and I've never owned a copy of this book. So, fine by me. I will reread it. God knows, when did this come out? In the 1950s? I have no idea when the last time I read this was. It was 1952. Yeah, I read this out of a private lending library here in Boston, and that would have been a long time ago. I'm well due for a reread. Then this next one also came up during, of course, if you're going to have David Murphy over as a guest, you're going to talk about World War II. And one of the little things we did in the midst of all the John Wayne clips and all the rest of it was to talk not only about World War II, but also a minor little subject that fascinates the both of us, which is the disgraced British historian David Irving, who wrote books on Nazi Germany, and the first few of them were critically well received. The critical world was thinking, oh, this guy reads the High German and of the time fluently. He's catching not only transcription and translation mistakes by earlier historians, but also finding new documents, and that makes him really interesting. That he was the type of person, type of historian that other historians welcomed and critics welcomed. Oh, what is the new David Irving going to say? Until it became apparent, creepingly apparent, that his books had been compromised by Nazism, that he had fallen under the sway of Adolf Hitler, despite the fact that for almost all of his life Adolf Hitler was dead. and he became a scandal. He was referred to by an American academician as a Holocaust denier. He didn't like that and decided to sue and lost at court. The judge referred to him, declared officially as a matter of law that he was not only a Holocaust denier, but a history distorter. Lethal. No one's going to publish you after that. No mainstream publisher is going to publish you after that. So he took to 35 years of publishing himself and going to increasingly small and degenerate meetings of people who pretty much were just Nazis or Nazi sympathizers. He became infamous for all sorts of intentionally incendiary comments about how there was no Holocaust, about how if mass people died, mass prisoners died in camps, A, there was no intent, and B, if there was intent, Hitler didn't know about it, and so on and so forth. And David and I watched a few documentaries of him. Unlike the impression that some of you may have had, especially if you don't live in the United States, the impression that you may have got from Donald Trump's Madison Square Garden Nazi rally last night, you may be thinking, well, surely the line is blurred. Who knows what's taught in American schools? But David and I like to read about World War II in part because the Nazis are the villains. They're the bad guys. You're not supposed to like them, much less pound a podium and imitate them. And one of the subjects that came up, one of the things that was a sore spot for David Irving, especially once he realized that he was persona non grata, and that was never going to change. Once he realized that he had been expelled from the respectable community of historians and also expelled by name from a handful of countries. You're not allowed, if we find you on our soil, we'll arrest you, we'll put you in prison. Once he realized that, in addition to publishing his own work after that, he also would often rail in a kind of self-pitying way about how many accolades he had received before he became persona non grata, never seeming to put two and two together that the reason for the change was him, not them. He never put two and two together and thought, well, maybe I have changed. Maybe I'm doing something wrong. Instead, he blamed you'll never guess who. But one of the books that he would always refer to in those flights of self-pity was his book, The Bombing of Dresden, which was a huge bestseller, all about the firebombing of the German city of Dresden. And that had, I'm still thinking over conversations from that visit, so that was on my mind when I finally saw a copy of this next book, which I had a hardcover of it. I've had a hardcover before on this channel, but I keep sending it away. I'm hoping that I hold on to it. This is The Fire, which is a 2016? Is that right? 2006. History of the Allied firebombing campaigns, not just in Dresden, but of course Dresden will be the star of this book. And this is a very rare, this is an English translation by Alison Brown, and the book itself is a very rare example of me losing my bookish self-control. I usually don't. I keep an eye on all sorts of things that are being published all over the place, not just in America. But my remit for reading, the shape of my reading that I've imposed on myself, is the new releases in the American book market. So I try never to go afield unless my inhibitions are just overcome, unless I'm tempted just too strongly. There have been a few instances like that over the years. There was a big biography of St. Louis, for instance, that I had friends going to France. I said, would you please get me a copy? There's a big new volume of Michelet, that of his history of the French Revolution that I really wish I had. But everyone that I've known, 4 people who've gone to France and come back since it came out in the Pleiade edition, and they were all willing to get it for me until they saw it. It's a box set in fairly heavy. They didn't want to lug it back to America, so I could buy these things online, but I like to bother my friends instead. And of course, most famously, emailed to me by dozens of you, there was just recently a big fat biography of Erasmus that has not been translated into English. It has not appeared in the American book market, and I doubt it will. So it's a slow burning agony to know that thing is out there, and that no one, I don't know anyone who's going to be able to go to Amsterdam and get it for me. I wish. The only person that I'm aware of who went to Amsterdam anytime recently was a male supermodel on Instagram. And A, I don't know him personally, so I can't ask him a favor, and B, I'm pretty sure that being inside a bookstore would panic the poor little thing. so I don't get to do that. But this was another one that tempted me. This was reviewed everywhere when it came out in German. Everywhere. Including, I believe, we can check. I could check the archives and find out if I'm right. I believe that the German edition of this book was reviewed in the TLS in English. It was reviewed everywhere. It came on my radar from 5 or 6 different places. To the point where I was extremely tempted to buy a copy before it gets translated, before it enters the American book market. I was pretty sure that it would. It was called Der Brand in German. And I was pretty sure that it would get translated. World War II books are a surefire thing in the American book market. But I actually did suborn a friend to get me a copy. A friend who was going to Germany and I said, it's just a normal hardcover. You can squeeze it into your luggage. I'm sure it'll be no problem. And he actually did it. That copy's long gone. And I've had this American hardcover a couple of times, and they're gone as well. I'm going to try and hold on to this one and reread it. And thankfully, this author includes David Irving's books in his bibliography. You can't not. But plenty of authors do. Plenty of them do. You can't leave him out just because you don't like what he became. I don't like what he became either. But your bibliography is supposed to reflect the full extent of your reading in preparation for writing your own book. And there's no chance at all that somebody writing about the firebombing of Dresden did not read David Irving's book. No chance at all. So if you did read it and leave it out because you're worried that a couple of people at your publishing house are going to picket the building, you're lying to readers that haven't even been born yet. You're not supposed to do that. Whether it's this author does at least cite that David Irving's books are in his bibliography, or if you're, for instance, a really reputable and extremely revered German historian who writes a long book about Heinrich Himmler and doesn't mention David Irving at all. Not in the bibliography, not in the notes, nowhere. Well, that's a lie. In order for that to be true, literally true, it would mean that you never read nor consulted anything that Irving did on the subject of Himmler. And that's not possible. And also pretty obvious in your book that didn't happen. So if you don't mention him for political reasons... but anyway, I now have a copy of this again, so I will try to hold on to it. It is seminal. It is a seminal work on the barbarity of the subject. I mean, there's no denying that. There were good guys and bad guys in World War II, but the Allies did bomb German civilian centers. First haphazardly and then systematically, but even the systematic stuff was not done with much planning or justification other than simply terror and pain. Which I know on one level you could say those are legitimate logistics in war. But we don't like to think that this is for Coventry. That just well, anyway, the author grapples with some of these questions, so I will too when I reread the book. Then we'll get on to the final 2 books here, and the first of them is The Find of the Day. I was just not expecting to see it. It was right there in the sale lot for I think $3. It's this. It's Taft and Roosevelt: The Intimate Letters of Archie Butt. In a hardcover, with a dust jacket, with a plastic covering on it. This is a 2-volume. I only found volume 1, but this is a 2-volume, and I have it. I also, thanks to how great the Brattle is, I see it there fairly regularly, but only in naked hardcovers. I don't ever see it with a dust jacket on. That is, those of you who are very young might not know, that is Theodore Roosevelt, and that is his friend and successor, William Howard Taft. As you can see from this picture, they are about the same weight. Okay, but anyway, these are letters that Archie Butt, a man named Archie Butt, he is posing like a peacock right in front of this book. There he is. He was a military aide, basically a body man, for Theodore Roosevelt and then for William Howard Taft. He was assuming that when Taft came into office, his job was over, and Taft said, "Are you insane? No, we need you. You stick around. You stick around." And he loved Theodore Roosevelt, as everyone did, and he came to love Taft as well. He recognized they were completely different people, but he came to love them both. And he wrote letters to his mother and his sister-in-law a lot. Long, descriptive letters that are amazing. The volume of his letters, the collected volume of his letters during his time with Roosevelt, and then the 2 volumes of Roosevelt and Taft are amazing primary sources for what happened at the time, and more importantly, what it felt like, where people went, and what they did, and some of the off-the-record things they said that would never get into a popular biography. They'd just be weeded out. But if you're interested in the subject, as I am, you'll want to read all about it. And also, in his letters, Archie Butt is a very good writer, a very engaging narrator. So it doesn't feel like a chore at all. Amazing to find this. I'm pretty sure that I did not see the other volume out in the sale lot. I could be wrong about that, but I have them anyway. But it's great to have one that I don't have to worry about tearing apart. The 2-volume blue hardcover set that I have is a replacement set. The original set that I have, I wore apart. And so the next time a 2-volume set showed up at the Brattle, which because the shop is so great, it does, I grabbed it. But now I have this. So, and then this last one, this is something that I believe I would have hauled on this channel. I think this is from 2016. Yeah, this is from 2016. We may have seen this on this channel if you go back all those years to 2016. And I got it. I think I wrote about it. I don't remember for who. And I liked it. And then I got rid of it. Big, heavy thing. I thought, you won't look at this more often, so just get rid of it. And I thought nothing of it at all. Thought nothing of it at all. It's Christopher Hamill. It's his book, Meetings with Remarkable Manuscripts. The great big thing with the gold gleam there. You've got, this is a little dog-eared and a little dirty, so I'm pretty sure this is not my copy. It's full of color illustrations. It's a very heavy book because it's just full of color illustrations from medieval manuscripts. That's what the author does. He goes and looks at a whole bunch of different medieval manuscripts and then tells you their stories. Not only what we know of their origin, but what we know of their subsequent adventures. Whose collection did they go into? How close did they come to burning or drowning? And I have not thought about this. I liked it, but I can't keep every book I like. I can't even keep every book I like and review. I can't keep them all. But I just read and reviewed history. We saw it on this channel of The Medieval Scriptorium by Sarah Charles. Was that her name? Charles was the last name of the author. I just reviewed it. I liked it. It had a few flourishes that I didn't like, but I liked it. And because we don't have any descriptions of what a medieval scriptorium actually got up to all day long from 9 to 5, and because we only have the slightest hint in floor plans, we don't actually know what they looked like, how they worked, anything like that. Necessarily, that book, The Medieval Scriptorium, had to talk about manuscripts a lot. The title was Medieval Scriptorium, but the author doesn't have a lot to go on there, so she was forced often to talk about manuscripts. She did a great job talking about manuscripts. She clearly loves it. Loves the subject. And when I finished that book, and especially when I finished it the second time and wrote a review, my instinct was, what was that big, beautifully illustrated book about medieval manuscripts? Where is it? I actually looked. I wasn't sure whether I had it or not. I couldn't quite remember if I got rid of it. So I was looking on various shelves and seeing, where is it? Where did you put it? Eventually I came to the conclusion, I don't have it. I must have got rid of it. And I can sort of understand why I would. It's a specialized thing. I'm only going to look at it once in a while. It's beautiful, yes, but that's not a reason to keep a book, especially a big, heavy one. So I thought nothing of it. Went to the Brattle, and there it was. Right there on the top of a pile of books. It'd been there just a second. And when the Brattle gods nudge you like that, you had bloody well better listen. So I did. I'm primed to read this thing again. Absolutely. Having read that other book on the scriptorium where all of these manuscripts were made. So I grabbed it. That was another way that the Brattle works, is with sheer coincidence. So there you go. A Brattle book haul after all this time. So we have Meetings with Remarkable Manuscripts with all this great gold gilding there. We have Taft and Roosevelt, The Letters of Archie Butt, Volume 1. We have The Fire, the English language translation. We have Sword and Swastika, Telford Taylor's debut book about German military minds. We have Entered from the Sun, some first-rate Tudor fiction by George Garrett, a wonderful, wonderful writer who's now completely forgotten and entirely out of print. But all of his books are great. We have Portrait of an Unknown Woman, which I will give another try and see if I can get any more about it than I did the first time. The Young Hamilton by Flexner, worth having even if you have the Chernow book. Battle for Manhattan by Bruce Bliven. Just day by day, hour by hour. It was extremely well recorded, all of those rearguard retreats. Henry VIII by what I don't hesitate at all to call a great Catholic writer. And finally, Print is Dead from almost 20 years ago. So is print dead? I don't know. There's still bookstores. Hopeful authors still dream of a print book contract from a mainstream publisher. The dream of print is not dead. That I know. People buy magazines. Libraries thrive. So we'll see what this author has to say. Probably nothing all that original. Of course, the goal with any trip to the Brattle, I always have two goals when I go to the Brattle, aside from needling the staff. I have two goals. One is short-term and one is long-term. The short-term one is, what am I going to find of interest? It's $3. So, and a couple of you did me the enormous favor of calling in store credit. Just an enormous, wonderful gift. That I just love. I love it when people do that. It guarantees you a Brattle haul, but it also means that I don't have to worry anyway, because I very seldom leave the sale lot where things are cheap. They're $1, $3, and $5. And the short-term goal that I have at the Brattle is that it's basically a slow-motion, slight entry fee library where I will get a whole bunch of books, anything that interests me, or that seems to, anything that tickles my fancy at all. I will read them, because unlike almost everyone else on BookTube, I don't get a pile of used books and then chuck them on a wall and never think about them again. I start in on them right away. I don't get to all of them all at once, but I start in on them right away. They become an active part of my reading. And if I don't like the thing that I took a flyer on, well, then it just goes in the latest discard pile. I don't even think about it. It's a pattern that's worked really well for me for a long, long time. So that's the short-term goal, is maybe I'll cast a net like that, take a chance on something, and maybe it'll be really good. Maybe I'll really enjoy it. And the long-term goal, of course, is to find keepers for the little book room. Not out here, but the little book room. Things that I want to have, things that I don't want to give up, things that I never see anymore, things that I treasure and want to go back to, reuse. And I don't know in this pile, Taft and Roosevelt, of course, because that's where my 2-volume copy is now. But the rest of these, I think the Battle for Manhattan, yeah. The paperback, the little blue Pelican paperback, is in the little book room. Certainly I should put the hardcover in there. Without a doubt, Entered from the Sun will go in there. After a reread, it will certainly go in there. But maybe Meetings with Remarkable Manuscripts, maybe it will go from gone and not even remembered to here and in the little book room. I don't know. I don't know. And of course, that slow percolation process of books going through the filter here from the original sorting bookcase over on the wall there, which is not just new releases, but also old stuff. That is the sorting book. That has become the sorting bookcase. All of it goes there before it goes anywhere else. And then it gets parceled out into the various sections here of biography or history or books about books. And then there's a further slow seepage of books into the little book room. where all books want to end up. And who knows? Who knows what will happen here? I would like to think that I might even like the Maynard Henry VIII book. I love the way he writes. And I love the subject. So who knows? But anyway, that's my goal. But we shall see. But anyway, I'm going to wrap this up. I'm pretty sure that I will resume going to the Brattle regularly until the end of the year. So there won't be any more month-long gaps there. But in the meantime, I will head out for now, and I will see you soon. Thank you, BookTube.